When we look at culture, if you go back and look at from the eyes of the person whose culture it is, there's logic behind all of these things. There's reasoning behind all of those things. And so it's really important that we think to it. Most cultures have common dimensions. They define our identity.
Shape our beliefs and values to make life easier and better, to dictate behavior by prescribing how members relate to each other and to authority, to influence our interactions with one another, and maintain traditions for all aspects of life. And to also, the main one is to ensure the survival of the culture.
Yeah.
They protect each other.
Do you ever think about cultures that grow up where the weather is good and you can grow plants year round? Do they have to do much planning on the future? Versus another culture that has a 3-month planting season and then the rest of the time there's snow. Isn't it interesting how weather and migrations and all of these things impact culture and impact us? So here's a question. What was the first culture and what was it like? So how did culture evolve? Adam and Eve created the first culture directly under the hands of Jehovah. But you know, some of the families, some of their children agreed with them and some didn't. So some incorporated certain things on their cultures and others left out certain things. Families with similar goals and ideas tended to stay together, others split off. But the neat thing was all cultures were guided by the light of Christ. So they couldn't go too far wrong. Are cultures good? I'd say yes. But it's interesting that cultures are man-made. Except for that first culture, all other cultures are man-made. They change over time, they evolve. They want to take care of families and help them live in peace. But based on migration, based on weather, based on environment, based on proximity to other cultures, the cultures changed and took on different characteristics. So what caused cultures to differ? We can use some things here. Goals, how they implemented the goals changed. Because again, these are people doing the best job with what they had. So for example, education. I believe in the culture of Christ, young men and young women were all educated together. Of course, some people said, you know what, the girls are going to be in the home, so we'll just educate the boys. Other ones said, you know what, the boys are going to be off fishing, so we'll just educate the girls. Interesting, the same goal, which is to educate the children, had different implementation strategies. Think about the relationship between men and women. In the culture of Christ, they were equal partners. Of course, some culture says, you know what, the women are a little bit, they're not quite as strong, so we have to take care of them. So all of a sudden, the men had responsibility for all that. And some of them even took that farther and said, you know what, they really don't know what they're doing. So all of a sudden, the women became almost as property. Mm-hmm. Significant difference from the culture of Christ. So as cultures diverged, it caused problems for those trying to live the gospel. So, question, what cultural expectations make personal finance difficult? So that's an impact.
That's a lot of money.
The family formation. And is that consistent with the gospel culture? The answer is no.
And I wonder how old you would be before you saved up $250,000 to get married.
34.
Yeah, you know, in some places, the money goes to the wife's family, and some places it goes to the husband's family. It varies depending on the culture. But again, in the culture of Christ, anything that harms the family formation is not good. So they're trying to do the best job with what they have. And I think if we look through the eyes of the cultures where they are, there's a logic behind all of this. It's not weird, it's not strange, it's fairly understandable. And so what we have to do is if we try to look at culture through the eyes of those who are living it, we can find that there's a reason behind it. So how did goals implementation create challenges? People had different opinions. People had different traditions. And it's interesting, even in the scriptures, they talk about the traditions of the fathers. And again, we know none of these are all, cultures are all man-made, they all evolve. And basically they evolve the way the leaders of the cultures, as they've tried to do the best job they can. Is there spending versus savings? Are there equal partners versus one partner superior? How about equal versus unequal education? How about community rights versus individual rights? And then safety nets versus no safety nets. Isn't it interesting? All of these things have an impact. And we've got to be careful that we don't, because if we can truly look through the eyes of those whose it is, we'll see the reasons and we'll see the logic. So what are we going to do here? There's actually 3 sections of this class. Section 1 was, or of this section on family financial plan, is how were you brought up? How did you learn about finances? The second section is how will you bridge the culture gap? What are the cultural expectations for you? And how will you bridge those so you can stay on the covenant path? And then the third section is what is your family culture going to be like? What are your vision, goals, plans, and strategies, constraints, and accountability?
Because you get to choose.
You get to choose. And even both of us being, again, from the U.S., our families were considerably different.
Yeah, so we chose our own family culture that we wanted to form when we were married.
Someone asked her the question in the first class. He says, what changes have you made to your family culture? You had a good answer.
So when we first got married, his family was used to giving a lot of things to other people and letting them borrow our things. And I was like, wait a minute, we paid good money for that. We should take care of it. You know, if we loan it out, we don't know what kind of condition it's going to come back. And sometimes things wouldn't come back, and sometimes they'd come back broken. And
Rarely.
But anyway, so so that was hard for me at the beginning. But then we decided that Heavenly Father blessed us more with more of the material things because he knew we would be willing to share it. So we do believe that sharing has helped us, and it has increased our blessings, but it was hard for me at first.